Hello, let's continue our discovery of the Schillinger theory of pitch scales. This tutorial is about the second group. These diatonic scales have a single root and a range exceeding 1 octave. You'll learn their properties, the creation of a melodic continuity from these scales, and then study 3 application examples. This is another video tutorial about the Schillinger system of musical composition, and we're looking at the theory of pitch scales, and more specifically, the second group of scales, with a single root or tonic degree and the total range exceeding the octave. You'll learn about the scale properties and how to create a melodic continuity from this type of scale. I'll demonstrate their use in 3 short composition examples. The journey will begin with the subject context and pitch scale properties. The Theory of Pitch Scales is a book in the Schillinger system of musical composition. For an introduction to its nomenclature, you may want to watch an older tutorial on my channel. On Book 1, The Theory of Rhythm, I wrote an e-book that may serve as a guide and is available in the webshop. Schillinger discerns 4 groups of pitch scales. The first group is covered in a series of 3 tutorials, while this episode will focus on the second group, as covered in Chapter 5 from Book 2. All scales use pitch classes from the equal-tempered chromatic scale. Schillinger's classification scheme is based on the number of roots or tonic degrees and the total compass, which may be less or more than a single octave. And since using a systematic and mathematical approach, you will observe frequent generalization concepts. The second group of scales have a single root, a constant tonic degree pitch unit. While group 1 scales had a limited range of less than the octave, now the compass will exceed this interval. This group uses the technique of tonal expansion to create multiple scales from a single source scale. This overview diagram will serve as a framework for the tutorial and depicts several relevant processes and techniques. The starting point is the method of tonal expansions applied to a diatonic source scale. The process is shown here in staff notation. The source is the 7-unit group 1 pitch scale marked at the top. The tonic degree is pitch class C. This diatonic scale contains half and whole tone steps and a minor third, that is, the 3 semitones interval. The total range is a major sixth, less than the octave. The degrees are labeled in ascending order as pitch numbers from P1 to P7. This is called expansion E0. Other expansions are obtained through reordering the original pitches, as this diagram illustrates for expansion E1, where we skip a neighboring pitch and thus obtain the pitch series P1, 3, 5, 7, P2, 4, 6. The range now exceeds the octave. This expansion contains many intervals of the third, and is the basis for harmony with chords and thirds, as discussed in the Schillinger general theory of harmony. The remaining set of expansions is obtained in a similar fashion by skipping 2 adjacent pitches for E3, 3 pitches for E4, and so forth. Although Schillinger mentions a constant root, here the scales are transposed to a different octave for easy reading from a grand staff. Note that expansion E3 has a range over 2 octaves, increasing to a very wide compass for E5. As a generalization, for a scale with n pitch units, there will be n-1 possible tonal expansions. The process is equivalent to reordering and octave transposition of the original set of pitch classes. Scales are the basis of either melody or harmony. The procedure for obtaining a melodic continuity from a scale was presented in the tutorials on Group 1 scales, and is shown here once again. Step 1 is the creation of melodic forms, shown at the bottom of the overview diagram. A melodic form involves an ordered series of all pitch units in the scale. While the original scale has ascending order from P1 to P7, an example melodic form is P1, P4, P3, P6, P5, P2, P7, with pitch classes remaining in their original octave position. In general, for a scale with n units, there are the factorial of n melodic forms, which, for the 7-unit example, yields over 5,000 options. A melodic form may be applied to any tonal expansion, a process illustrated here in staff notation. The pitch order is P1, 4, 3, 7, 2, 6, 5, and when applied to the previously derived expansions, we get the ordered series starting here with the case of E0. Implementation of a melodic form automatically implies melodic quality, as expressed by the number and direction of leaps and steps. The example has two pairs of adjacent degrees, P3, P4 and P6, P5, and these will expose the characteristic interval in the expanded scale. Note the thirds in E1, the fourths in E3, etc. The wider expansions have atonal character, as the audio rendering demonstrates. Again, when applying a melodic form, we are reshuffling the original 7 pitch classes. You may improve the melodic quality by a process called octave adjustment, and that is illustrated here, where we collapse the very wide range of the melodic form example to a total of around 2 octaves. Schillinger states that the tonic degree should be a constant pitch, here C4, but I took liberty and transposed the 2 last melodic forms to the lower octave. The melodic form applied to E0 is not modified. However, I kept the adjacent degree pairs, marked in the score, in the same octave, since they feature the characteristic interval of the tonal expansion scale. In general, after octave adjustment, the ordered pitch series are more suitable for use in a melodic continuity. We continue the procedure for creating a melodic continuity, and the next step involves combination of melodic forms that may undergo permutation and may be used multiple times through recurrence coefficients. Remember that the 7-unit group 2 scale has 6 expansions and more than 5,000 melodic forms, so we already have near limitless potential for combinations and permutation. So let's have a look at an example. This 7-element melodic continuity is based on 2 melodic forms, MF1 and MF2, and 5 different tonal expansion scales. The melodic form recurrence coefficients in this example are 1, since there are no repetitions, but feel free to use that degree of freedom. In total, we obtain 49 attacks, with a specific ordering of the 7 pitch class collection. While listening to this example continuity, pay attention to the coincidental triadic structures and occasional chromatism. The final step in the procedure is what Schillinger calls time-rhythm superimposition, overlaying a duration series over the melodic continuity attack series. We may use a rhythmic pattern from his theory of rhythm, but here I chose a duration series that helps achieving better melodic quality. This means that voice leading for leaps and steps starts to make more sense. Some musical beauty will result. Listen to the continuity with rhythm. Now that you've seen the process for generating group 2 pitch scales through tonal expansion and the procedure for creating a melodic continuity, let's have a look at 3 example compositions. The first short composition is an orchestral piece based on a 7-unit group 2 pitch scale. We are now on the right hand side of the overview diagram, where an extended melodic continuity is shown, with multiple sections connected through melodic modulations that present the scale on a fresh tonic degree, a new root. Until now, all techniques only lead to reordering and octave transposition of the original pitches, but through modulation there will be new pitch classes introduced. Before presenting the extended melodic continuity, let's revisit the E0 expansion scale and study the implied harmony potential. What you see here is a set of major or minor triads and Riemannian transformations. I did a series of 5 tutorials on this subject. For this scale there are 2 primary transformations, the relative minor and the leading tone exchange. But more interestingly, we also have 3 compound transformations. 2 third-order PLP transformations that yield a hexatonic symmetric set, and 1 slide transformation with constant chordal function 3. Listen to these triadic harmonies that will be used as background in our orchestral setting. The first melodic continuity section is based on the original 7-unit pitch scale on root C. For the second phrase, we modulate to a tonic degree a minor third below, so now the root becomes A. Both are connected through melodic modulation, a technique for which you saw 3 alternative approaches in earlier videos. Here we use the common pitches approach, the overlap between the 2 scales. The common pitches are C, C sharp, F and A. The second melodic continuity phrase on the new root is different from MC1. We use 2 melodic forms and 4 tonal expansion scales. The continuity consists of 5 elements, so the total number of attacks now is 35. These imply a specific order of the 7 pitches in the transposed scale. Deliberately I chose an opening that is identical to MC1, with MF1 applied to expansion E0. The rhythm superimposition, the duration series overlay, is shown here. We may classify the modulation as polytonal unimodal, since we use the same set of 6 expansion scales, only transposed to a new root, a different key. This classification aspect was discussed in the Group 1 Part 3 tutorial. The rhythm gets busier near the end, with more 16th notes. I changed octave register for some elements in the continuity. Adjacent degree pairs are marked, there are note repeats, and I stress the occurrence of triadic structures and chromatism. Here is the modulating middle section. I created the transition from characteristic motifs near the end of MC1, in this case the leap pattern with dotted 8/16 rhythm and the descending step. The transition must have sufficient length to disassociate from the first section tonic degree C. However, I violated the Schillinger rule that says that you should avoid the new root A, but here you will observe a number of A's. I aimed for a smooth transition into and out of the modulation phrase. Listen to this pointillistic orchestral setting with slight Anton Webern character. Read along with the annotated reduced score. The second example has a different sound. It is based on a new Group 2 scale, this time with 6 pitch units. The reason is that for scales with even pitch numbers, the tonal expansion process implies skipping the pitches that have already been used. That is illustrated here for expansion E1 of a 6 pitch unit scale. Listen first to the original, the source E0 scale. For the E1 expansion, after P1, P3, P5, we would land back on P1, but all pitches may occur only once. So we skip that degree in order to obtain the series P1, 3, 5, 2, 4, 6. A Group 2 scale with a range of more than 1 but less than 2 octaves. Here are the other three, the wider range expansions. As before, I use octave transposition for easy reading. Let's turn this basic material into a melodic continuity example. You've seen the application of a single melodic form to all expansions before. From a total set of 720 options, we select the ordered pitch series P1, 4, 3, 5, 6, 2. Again, I adjust octave positions in order to improve the melodic quality. Applying a melodic form means reordering the original pitch classes. In order to generate variants with new pitches, we turn to the method of modal derivative scales, a technique presented earlier in the Group 1 tutorials. For example, take the expansion E0 scale and apply circular pitch permutation, which means start on P2 for the first derivative scale, on P3 for the next, and so forth. Then transpose these to the original root and we have obtained the set of 6 modal derivatives with different pitch content. You may do the same for all other expansions. I've illustrated the process for E1, the expansion 1 6-unit scale. I applied circular pitch permutation and transposition to the constant root C4. Thus obtaining the set of 6 modal derivative variants, with pitch classes not contained in the source scale. Note the implied triadic chord structures. Alternatively, you may apply circular pitch permutation after using a specific melodic form MFJ with an expansion EI. This will yield a different set of modal derivative scales. That is shown here, where we create modal derivatives after the melodic form with ordered pitch series P1, 4, 3, 5, 6, 2 has been applied to tonal expansion E3 with the wider leaps. We bring all these techniques together in a melodic continuity, again with 2 MC sections in different keys, connected through melodic modulation. We use 2 melodic forms and a subset of modal derivative scales. MC1 has root C and consists of 2 elements, melodic form MF1 applied to expansion E0 and MF2 applied to the modal derivative scale DS4, obtained from expansion E1. It may take you some time to reconstruct this phrase from the source material. We modulate to the root F, a perfect fifth below, and use the identical motives approach to melodic modulation. These are the descending leaps with arpeggio character. The second melodic continuity phrase also consists of 2 elements. Now melodic form MF1 is applied to the modal derivative scale DS3 from expansion E3, and then we apply MF2 to E0. Note how we have achieved a richer collection of pitches. Selection of the appropriate modal scale will determine how close the similarity is between the original and modal derivative scale. For this setting, again, we will use a harmonic background with chord structures implied by the melodic phrases. Here we see a number of triads and seventh chords, in either root or inverted position. The sketch is used to create an ambient texture for synthesizers and orchestral instruments. I decided not to show a condensed score. Instead, I will mark the source elements that are used while the music is playing and provide some virtual instrument details. As a final example, let's reuse the same continuity but create a completely different mood, a relaxed bossa nova phrase with a new harmony. To harmonize the melodic continuity phrases, we use extended jazz chords that are independent from the scale pitch content. Flute, clarinet and harmony mute trumpet play the lead melody, which is a rhythm overlay over the MC phrases. The sustained harmony is played by horn in F and 4 bucket mute trombones, plus we have a rhythm and percussion section. The musical idiom is reminiscent of Klaus Ogerman, but without the high violins. Listen to this short bossa nova phrase that suggests the key of F major minor. In this tutorial, you learned about the Schillinger Group 2 pitch scales, single root scales with a range of more than an octave. We looked at the properties of tonal expansion scales and the steps towards creating a melodic continuity, with combinations of melodic forms that reorder the pitch series. Fresh pitches are introduced through the process of modal derivative scales or melodic modulation to a new root. Feel free to consider these techniques for writing melodic phrases academic humbug, but one day they may help you to overcome writer's block. Example continuities were demonstrated in 3 short example compositions. Please give this video a like and subscribe to my channel, where you'll find numerous free tutorials that share music composition and arranging techniques. You may help growing the channel or support my video production efforts by making a PayPal donation. You'll find the link in the description below. Visit the website for more content and for buying ebooks from the webshop. Thanks for watching.